Hello everyone, it's Nick Lawson with CDC Take Charge Software, and this is our second lesson in having fun with graphics and animation in Alpha Software. Well, at the end of our last lesson, I said that we would take what we learned and see if we can create a Pong game using the components that we created so far. So that's what we're going to look at today. First, let's see what we got done. I've got Play Pong on my form. Click it, it switches to page, and now we've got a little table to do our Pong on. So when I click Play Ball, we have a paddle that shows up on the left, and as you can see, the ball's bouncing pretty vigorously on the paddle. If I use the arrow keys, the up-down arrow keys on the keyboard, and move the paddle, it continues to bounce until the center of the ball fails to strike the paddle. Then the game ends. So there you go. Now let's take a look and see how we did all that. First, we're going to look at the on push event. Okay, we are setting X bounce to equal bounce. We're setting our direction to be left. Now, in the previous lesson, it was up and down. Now it's left and right. So we're starting out going to the left. And we set DL to be bounce ball. X length is set to 0. We're not actually using that at this point, but we will in the future. And we have the ball object left is equal to 4.1. That's where it's starting on the screen. And the paddle is at the top, from the top down, 2.7 inches. We set our variables, and then we make the two objects visible, and they show up on the screen. Now, on key moves the paddle. So again, instead of using left-right, we're now using up-down. And our object, the distance is from object top. And remember, object top is from the top of the form, not the top of the monitor page, not the top of Alpha Software, but the top of the form. And we have two settings. If it's going up, we want to stop at 1.25 inches. If it's going down, we want to stop at 7.25 inches. And then, as it goes up and down, we increment by 0.15. If it's going up, we want to use a minus 0.15 because the number gets smaller as it gets to the top of the page. And we use a plus 1.25 to go down because the number gets greater. Pretty much it. Now the on timer event. Okay, here we had to make quite a few changes. When the ball is bouncing, as I said, if it does not strike the paddle, then the game ends. So that's the first thing we wanted to set in our code for the on timer event. Here we're making sure that if DL equals bounce ball, then the timer event runs. So we are assigning to X ball position the position of the ball at the time the form loads. So it says if X ball position is less than or equal to 1, then top parent ball 1 object visible equals false, and DL equals blank, which would basically end the game. Now the reason we're using less than 1 is because the paddle has a width to it. So therefore 1 plus the width of the paddle, which is 0.3 inches, tells us that if the ball gets past the 1.3, it's missed the paddle, and therefore the game ends. That's a pretty simple way to do it. So now, once that's determined that we are in fact running, we want the direction to be left, just like we started out, and we want to set our ball position as far as the left position on the screen, as well as the top-down position. Now here, you'll notice that it's the object top plus 0.15. The 0.15 is because the ball has a width of 0.3 of an inch, and we want the center point on the ball to be the point that strikes the paddle. Now, as far as the gain goes in what we have written so far, that's no big deal. But in the next lesson, we'll be looking at how to move that ball at angles depending on where it strikes the paddle. And therefore we need the center point of the ball to be what strikes the paddle. Next we take and set the top of the paddle to be uh, the top of the text box and the bottom of the paddle to be the bottom of the text box. Then we write a conditional statement. So it says if ball position is greater than 1 and ball position is less than 1.3 and x ball top is greater than and equal to x text top and x ball top is less than and equal to x text bottom, then let's scroll on over here. Uh, we want to take and go ahead and bounce the ball basically and set the direction to right because we now have struck the paddle and we want the ball to return in the opposite direction. Otherwise, if it hasn't gotten to that point yet where it's about to strike the ball, we want to take and have it continue to move to the left. So since our left position is less than our starting left position, we do a minus 0.21. And that advances the ball to the left. Um, then we go ahead and as it gets to each point, we reset our position and then the on-timer event strikes again and the whole thing runs over again. Now, once the ball position reaches the right side of the screen, once it strikes the paddle and starts going right, we want to take and advance at a 0.21 plus because we're getting larger going to the right. And again, we reset our position. And once it gets to 7.9, which is the rightmost edge of the screen, or of our little table, then we set the direction back to left. Otherwise, we move to the right. That's pretty much it. Now, let's take another look at it. And while it's running, I will discuss what we'll be doing next. Okay, now as you can see right now, it's just bouncing away. So in our next lesson, what we're going to try and determine is if the ball bounces at a point that is to the top of the center of the paddle, then based on the distance from the center, we'll determine the distance of the angle that it needs to bounce. When that happens, the ball, instead of just striking and going back, will go off at an angle like this. Once it hits the top of the page, it'll bounce at an equal angle in the opposite direction, coming over to here, and then an equal angle down to here, and then an equal angle back to here. So, or somewhere along this space. So that way, it's working just like a real Pong game. We move the paddle, and if we keep it dead center, it's going to continue to bounce. If we're off dead center, it will then angle, and we'll have to catch it wherever it hits. So once more time, if I take and advance below the edge of the center of the ball, the game stops. That's it for today. I hope you enjoyed this, and I'm looking forward to doing the angles. That looks like it might be pretty challenging, but I think we can get it done. Thanks a lot, and have a great day, and I'll see you again soon.